Okay, the notes today is backtracking a section back to 2-2, multiplying and factoring. Central question, how do you find the GCF of a polynomial? So someone already just asked, what's a GCF? And someone answered it. That's true. Do you remember what they said? What did they say? Greatest common factor. If you need to write that down, make note that GCF is greatest common factor. Okay. So, example 1, the directions are, what is a simpler form of following? What is a form of 5n times the quantity 3n cubed minus n squared plus 8? What is the simpler, sorry, I kind of wrote uphill, simpler form of 5n times the quantity 3n cubed minus n squared plus 8? Now, if you were able to do what we did with the sub, you should know how to do this. If you did the quiz or followed what we just did before the quiz today when we were reviewing, you should know how to do this. So if you raise a hand, who would know how to simplify the following expression? Hunter? Distribute, right? We have this multiplier out front. It needs to be distributed into the trinomial. Okay? So, Jocelyn, what would we get when we distribute 5n in? Okay, so 5n times 3n is 15, well, n times n cubed would make it n to the 1 plus 3 would be 4, yep. And then we do 5n times n squared. Out of their exponents, there's one n here and there's two n's there. So that'd be cubed. And lastly, 5n times a positive 8. There you go. And is this in standard form, guys? Yep, that's how we want them. Highest exponent 4, decreasing to 3, decreasing to n to the first power. Standard form and decreasing to. Okay? So, I'll give you another one to try really quick. Example 2, same directions. What's a simpler form of... oh, I'm going to challenge you guys. Let's see. This is an S, not a 5. Yeah. Okay. Two variables, but the same process. You can do it. Okay, work it out. And then once you're done, check with your neighbor, see if they have the same. Double check with your neighbor, see if they are getting the same as you. We just reviewed one of these and there are two variables. What do you do? I've seen. I'm looking good. Okay. Brave soul that thinks they have it correct. Oh, lots of hands. Excellent. If you think you have it correct. Kaylin, tell us what you got. Thumbs up, thumbs middle. She needs to pick something or down, completely off. Good. That's excellent. I give her a thumbs up as well. So in case you need to hear why that works, 6 times 3 is 18, yes? On the r's, all we do is add the exponents. R squared, R cubed, 2 plus 3, that's where she got the 5. S to the first power times S cubed, 1 plus 3, that's where she got the 4. Minus 6 times negative 2 is our 12. R squared, that makes 2 plus 2 is 4. And on the S's, 1 plus 2 is 3. And then lastly, 6 times 4 is 24, R squared S. So, here's a question. I already boxed it. But is this actually in standard form? What's the power of this monomial? 9. For a monomial, if there's multiple variables, you add the exponents. So this power, or degree, is 9. What is the degree of that monomial? 7. Good. And the degree of this monomial? 3. Excellent. So it is in standard form. And our letters in their alphabetical order. We usually like it that way. Any questions on this? Okay. Example 3. What is the GCF? Remember, GCF is greatest common factor of the terms of this trinomial. 3x to the 4th minus 9x squared minus 12x. What's the GCF? Greatest common factor. Any ideas? Yeah? Okay, she thinks the GCF is 3x. What do you think about that? Okay, can someone else explain why it would work? Okay, Harland?
It's 3x to be multiplied with 3.
Is it multiplied? Divided, yep. Because this guy, we can divide out of 3x, right? It has a 3 to give and it has an x to give. This guy, we can divide negative 9 by 3, and we can take off an x. And this guy, we can divide negative 12 by 3, right? And we can take out an x. Okay, so the GCF is 3x. Good. Let me give you another one to practice. I think I have another one. So sometimes the greatest common factor also has variables, so make sure you're including those variables. Example 4, same directions. Here's our trinomial this time. 5x cubed plus 25x squared plus 45x. Okay, I want you to try that one by yourself first. And when you think you have it, turn to your neighbor and check if they are being the same. So there's really 2 steps. First, find the integer, that is, or the greatest common factor that divides out of their coefficients, and then look at how many x's can pull out of all of the terms. Turn to your neighbor when you think you're done. See if they have the same. If you have it and your neighbor doesn't, help them. Yep, that's it. So you just put GCF equals that guy. 25 and 45. That's the greatest sum of those guys times. Yeah, but it can't be any larger than the small sky, right? No, the small sky? The small sky's 5. I'm just looking at the coefficients. What's the coefficients? So what's the largest number that can divide into 5, 25, and 45? 5. It can't be any bigger than the small sky. So, GCF equals hang out with so at most, how many exits can we pull out? So we can't ever be any larger than the small sky.
This year, what grade?
Okay, so for the coefficients, can I have everyone's attention please in 3, 2, 1. Oh, did you write down your homework? Page 55, 1 through 31. Okay. So first we look at coefficients. 5, 25, and 45. You're thinking, what's the largest number we can divide out of all of them? But it will never be larger than 5. Because if we divide by something larger than the smallest guy, then we get a fraction. That doesn't work, right? So you'll know the number can't be larger than 5. So what's the greatest common factor that divides out of 5, 25, and 45? Good. So that's our first part. Now we look at the variables. This guy has how many x's? 3. This guy has how many x's? This guy has 1. So again, you can't ever pull out more than the smallest guy. So at most, how many x's can all of them give? 1. 5x is the greatest common factor. Now, for our next type of problem, we're going to use that. We're going to actually take that greatest common factor and factor it out and see what is remaining. Okay? So, what is the factored form? We'll be doing factoring today and the next, I think, 2 more days. Factoring, factoring, factoring. We'll be doing that a lot. What am I on? Example 5? What is the factored form of, well, 9x to the 6th plus 15x to the 4th plus 12x squared. Okay, so I'll step you through this one first and then you can try one in a minute. The first thing, step 1, is to identify the GCF. Okay, so again we look at the coefficients first. 9, 15, and 12. We know the smallest guy is 9, so this number can't be any larger than 9. What's the greatest common factor that divides into 9, 15, and 12? 3. Does 9 divide into 15? No. So sometimes you can use that small guy like we did in the lesson, but not all the time. So lots of you are already saying it. It is 3. 3 divides into 9 evenly. 3 divides into 15 evenly, 3 divides into 12 evenly. So for us, the greatest common factor is 3. Now let's look at the x's. This one has 6 to give, this one has 4 to give, this one has 2 to give. So at most, they all can give how many? 2. It's always that little guy. X squared. So the greatest common factor is 3x squared, which is not our answer because now we're going to actually factor it out. Step 2. Factor out the GCF. What that means, when we're factoring, we're dividing it out. So, it still exists, I'm going to pull it out, and then in parentheses, I'm going to write everything remaining. Hold on, I need to give myself a little more room. I'm going to cheat a little bit and move this down. Yeah, that's pretty nice, isn't it? Okay, so I want to show you what's really happening. We're going to divide this trinomial by 3x squared. So 9 divided by 3 is
3.
3. X to the 6 divided by x
X
squared.
4. X 4.
Remember, when dealing with these exponents and the base is the same, when we divide, we have to subtract. Divide, subtract. 6 minus 2 is x to the 4. When we're factoring, it's just division. We're dividing it away. So I divide by that greatest common factor we found. Okay, Andres, can you help me with this one? What's 15 divided by the 3? Positive 5. And then x to the 4th divided by x squared. Yeah, because we subtract, right? 4 minus 2 is 2, so x squared. Now, one more to do. 12x squared divided by the same greatest common factor of 3x squared. Okay, is it in the same, right? Okay. 12 divided by 3, x squared divided by x squared, what do we get in? 4. Okay, so this will be our answer. We factored out the greatest common factor, showing what's remaining. So the greatest common factor is still there. It doesn't disappear. It's still there. It's in the front. It's a multiplier. Because if I went through and I distributed this back in, I would multiply it back in. And isn't multiplication the inverse of division? So I would, if I distribute this back in, I get it right back to the beginning. Because it would be undoing the division. Inverses undo each other, yeah.
In the parentheses on the 3x to the 4th, why isn't it 3x to the 3rd? Because the exponent is 6 divided by 2.
But exponents we subtract.
Oh.
Because, yeah, that's a great question. Because this guy has 6 x's, and this guy has 2. So they cancel, leaving 4. So multiply, add, but when we divide, with the exponents, we subtract, divide, subtract. Okay? Great question. Okay, I'm going to give you one to try. Example 6, same directions. Write the factored form, which remember you have to find the greatest common factor first. Then you divide it out and write what's remaining. 4x to the 5th minus 24x cubed plus 8x. Feel free to work with your neighbor if you would like. At least when you finish, communicate with your neighbor. Make sure you're getting the same greatest common factor, and when you pull it out, you are pulling it out in the same way, dividing in the way. When you think you have it, turn to your neighbor and discuss. You can turn a different way than you normally turn. Front, back, left, right.
I got 2x. And then in the parentheses, I got x 4 minus 9x squared plus 2x1. Because the... Hold on, you got 4? I got 2.
Because 4 is like a bigger number, and then like it could be smaller than the other one, but like 4 just all just bigger.
Is that the bigger one?
I don't know. That's two problems.
There's still some people I've probably never called on. Savina. They're probably one of them. Savina, what did you get for the greatest common factor? 4x. Thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you guys think? Good. Because 4, negative 24, and 8 are all divisible by 4, and they all have at least one x. Okay, so what we're going to do is divide every term by 4x. And I think it's even helpful to write these. Divide, divide, divide. So that we get for a factored form. Sean, what did you get for a factored form?
So, I got x to the fifth, and then negative 6x to the third, and plus 2.
Where's the greatest common factor? Yeah, so we need that in front times the quantity. Okay? So 4 divided by 4 is 1, yes? And then x to the 5th divided by x is x to the 4, because it's subtract. So I think you got all your coefficients, we just have to fix the x's a little bit. So Sean, help us out a little bit. 5 minus 1 would leave
4.
4, so we'll change that to a 4. Negative 24 divided by 4 is negative 6, right? So we got that. 3 minus the 1 is, so we'll change that to 2. And then this one's right, yeah? Because x divided by x cancels. So just make sure you have that 4x multiplying in front. You have a question?
Why can't we put 2 for GCF?
Because it's not the greatest. It is a common factor, but it's not the greatest common factor. That's a good question, too. So the vocabulary is, what is the greatest common factor? So it is true that 2 divides into all of them as well, yes? Yes. Because they're all even. But it's just a common factor, it's not the greatest. Make sure you're using the greatest. Okay, last thing. I'm going to throw you a curveball. See if you, same direction, see if you can do this one. Really, really, really think what they have in common for this one. Really, really, really think. What do they have in common for that GCF, and then factor it out? I hope you notice this one has something different than the other ones might have. You can still do it. Before we get too far, let's make sure everyone's getting the greatest common factor. Stand up when you think you have the greatest common factor. Okay. Have a seat. Edith, what did you guys get for your greatest common factor? So does 2 divide into all of them? Yes, it is a factor. I don't think it's the greatest, though. Okay? Okay, does 6 divide into all of them? Yes. Do they all have x squared? And what's the smallest guy? Does he have exactly x squared? Yeah, so you can't just do x. It has to be x squared, would be the greatest. So I think there's one more detail that they all have in common.
Negative.
Oh shoot, I have a Jade and I have a J dot. You're one of them. You're Jade. Okay. They all have a negative in common as well. So let's go through and factor this out. Factored form, you have to write that GCF. That is part of the factored form, so don't just make it disappear into oblivion. You actually write that. So we're going to divide out by negative 6x squared on each of them. Remember, that means you're subtracting exponents. Okay, go ahead and divide them out. Stand up when you think you have your answer. I'm sorry, what? I don't see a 3. Oh, this one has, yeah, we don't divide on the x's. It's just this one has 4, this one has 3, this one has 2. So I can take at least 2 from all of them. It's the coefficients you have to divide on. Okay, stand up when you think you have the factored form. And these are all negatives. So check your signs. That GCF is negative. We're divided by negative divided by negative is a positive, okay? Check your signs. Everyone be careful on those signs. You guys on the aisle, I always. Good. Okay, have a seat. Oh, actually, I'm going to talk to you. Samantha, you go by Sammy? Yeah. Sammy. Okay, Sammy, what'd you get? We have negative 6x squared times what? What? Okay. Okay, how are her signs? Good. Yeah, kind of a negative divided by negative, positive, positive, positive. All those should be positive. Excellent. Okay, so the book assignment is page 55, numbers 1 through 31. Towards the end, there's some challenge story problems. Guys, our end of year SAGE test, released this last year, was heavy on story problems. We have to learn how to do story problems. Don't just skip them.
I don't know how to do them.
You want those story problems? Oftentimes drawing a picture helps. Okay, so open up your books. We have time in class right now. You can start working on your assignment. You can even work with a neighbor as long as